time, you must be after something very big. Just how big is it?
Hollywood is a place where dreams are born, but it's also where they can be erased in an instant. Some stars didn't just fade away. They were locked out, their names whispered only in cautionary tales.
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? Say, I got it on them in the wind, the speed, and the noodle. I was knocking them all over the place.
Have you ever wondered what it really takes for Tinseltown to slam its gates shut forever? From silenced legends to modern icons erased overnight, these 25 famous faces will leave you gasping. Stay tuned, because the final name is unforgettable. Fatty Arbuckle. At the height of the silent film era, Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle was one of Hollywood's most beloved comedians. He signed million-dollar contracts, mentored Buster Keaton, and even rivaled Charlie Chaplin in popularity. Yet in 1921, a single hotel party in San Francisco changed everything. A young actress fell gravely ill, and rumors spread like wildfire. Although the evidence never proved Arbuckle guilty of wrongdoing, newspapers branded him the villain of the decade. The trial became a circus, stretching through 3 exhausting rounds. In the end, Arbuckle was acquitted, completely cleared of all charges. But Hollywood had already made up its mind. Studios banned him, theaters pulled his films, and his once towering career was reduced to ashes. Behind the camera, he worked under the name William Goodrich, but the magic of Fatty was gone. His downfall wasn't just personal, it was cultural. Arbuckle's ban showed how swiftly Hollywood could sacrifice its brightest star to protect its image. His story remains one of the earliest and most shocking examples of a career erased not by guilt, but by reputation. Paul Kelly. Paul Kelly was once a Broadway darling, acting on stage from the age of 8. By the 1920s, he had transitioned into films, tall, charming, and poised for major success. But behind the spotlight, his private life spiraled into confrontation. In 1927, after a heated altercation involving a fellow actor and complicated relationships, tragedy struck. The fallout was swift. Hollywood doesn't forgive when the headlines turn sour. Kelly was sentenced and sent away, his rising career derailed overnight. For most actors, this would have meant permanent exile. Yet Hollywood can be strangely fickle. After serving his time, Kelly clawed his way back onto the screen, eventually appearing in dozens of films. But the shadow of his past never left him. Studios hesitated to give him leading roles, and critics often reminded audiences of the scandal that once defined him. His story is less about triumph than it is about survival. Paul Kelly may not have been fully erased, but he was never the same shining star again. For many, his name became synonymous with Hollywood's darker side, the price of one mistake carried for life. Rory Calhoun. Picture this, a rugged cowboy, hat tilted low, striding confidently into the frame. That was Rory Calhoun, the handsome leading man of countless westerns. But before Hollywood discovered him, his life read more like a crime novel than a movie script. As a teenager, Calhoun stole cars, ran from reform schools, and even served time behind bars. When he finally entered Hollywood in the 1940s, agents carefully buried his past. But secrets never stay buried for long. In the 1950s, tabloids threatened to expose Calhoun's criminal history. Instead of hiding, his agent cleverly leaked the story to the press, turning scandal into branding. Calhoun was recast not as a fallen star, but as Hollywood's bad boy. Even so, the stain of his past limited how far he could rise. While he worked steadily, he was never embraced as a true A-list icon. Producers saw him as a risk, and certain studios quietly blacklisted his name from prestige projects. His journey shows how Hollywood can rewrite someone's image, but never fully erase the whispers. Rory Calhoun walked tall on screen, but off-screen he was a reminder that fame is fragile when your history refuses to disappear. Hedy Lamarr. She was called the most beautiful woman in the world, but Hedy Lamarr was far more than a pretty face. A European émigré, she dazzled audiences in Algiers and Samson and Delilah. Yet behind the glamour, Lamarr harbored brilliance. She co-invented a communication system that later inspired Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. But instead of celebrating her mind, Hollywood grew suspicious. During the tense atmosphere of the 1950s, whispers spread that Lamarr's European ties and outspoken nature made her un-American. Studios quietly distanced themselves, contracts dried up, and she found herself locked out of the very system she once dominated. Once at the peak of stardom, Lamarr's later years were marked by rejection and obscurity. Her exile wasn't due to lack of talent. It was Hollywood's fear of a woman too bold, too clever, and too unwilling to play by the rules. Only decades later did the world rediscover her genius, honoring her as both a trailblazing actress and a forgotten inventor. But by then, Hollywood had long closed its gates. Charlie Chaplin. Few faces are more iconic than Charlie Chaplin. The bowler hat, the cane, the mustache. He was a global symbol of comedy and silent-era brilliance. But in post-war America, Chaplin became something else. A target. His political views, his outspoken criticism of U.S. policy, and his refusal to take citizenship made him a magnet for controversy. In 1952, while traveling to London for a film premiere, Chaplin learned he was barred from re-entering the United States. The message was clear. The government and the Hollywood establishment had decided he no longer belonged. Though eventually allowed back years later, his career in America was effectively finished. Chaplin's banishment wasn't just about politics, it was about fear. In an era obsessed with conformity, Chaplin's independence made him dangerous. His story remains one of the most dramatic examples of how Hollywood can build someone into a legend and then slam the door shut when they no longer fit the narrative. Josephine Baker. Long before Beyoncé or Rihanna, Josephine Baker was the world's most electrifying performer. She conquered Paris with her bold dances, became a French resistance hero during World War II, and later championed civil rights in America. But Hollywood? Hollywood never forgave her courage. In the 1930s, Baker attempted to break into American films, only to be branded as too controversial for her outspoken views on race and justice. Later, when she openly criticized segregation, she was blacklisted from U.S. venues and film opportunities. Studios refused to hire her, despite her international fame. Her ban wasn't about talent. She had more of it than most stars combined. It was about daring to speak out in a time when silence was demanded. Josephine Baker remains a legend, but her Hollywood dream was deliberately erased by those who couldn't handle her truth. Lillian Hellman. Brilliant, sharp-tongued, and unafraid of politics, Lillian Hellman was one of Hollywood's most successful screenwriters. Her credits included The Little Foxes and Watch on the Rhine. But when the House Un-American Activities Committee demanded names of supposed communists, Hellman refused. Her defiant letter still rings today. "I cannot and will not cut my conscience to fit this year's fashions." That statement sealed her fate. Studios blacklisted her instantly. She was banned not because of proven disloyalty, but because she wouldn't betray others. Hellman spent decades fighting to restore her name, but the damage was done. Hollywood had made its choice. Silence was rewarded. Courage was punished. Her story is a reminder that in Tinseltown, freedom of thought could be the quickest path to exile. Dalton Trumbo. If Hollywood had a blacklist poster child, it was Dalton Trumbo. A brilliant screenwriter behind films like Roman Holiday and Spartacus, he was one of the infamous Hollywood 10 who refused to testify before Congress. The punishment? Complete banishment. For years, Trumbo wrote under pseudonyms, winning Oscars without his name attached. Imagine that, one of the greatest writers of the era forced into hiding just to keep working. It wasn't until Kirk Douglas boldly credited him on Spartacus in 1960 that the dam finally broke. Trumbo's journey shows both the cruelty of Hollywood's blacklist and the resilience of artistry. He may have been banned, but his words found their way to the screen anyway. His eventual comeback was sweet, but the years of silence left scars. Jane Fonda. Few actresses have divided America like Jane Fonda. In the 1960s and 70s, she was both a celebrated Oscar winner and a lightning rod for outrage. Her vocal opposition to the Vietnam War earned her the nickname Hanoi Jane. Photographs of her visiting North Vietnam sealed her fate in Hollywood for years. Studio heads quietly shelved projects, advertisers pulled away, and her name was whispered with anger rather than respect. Though she later rebuilt her career with Coming Home and 9 to 5, the ban period was real and brutal. Fonda's story shows how political activism can elevate a figure to legend and at the same time push them out of the very industry that once embraced them. Vanessa Redgrave. When Vanessa Redgrave took home an Oscar in 1978, she used her acceptance speech to make a political statement. The reaction was instant: protests, boos, and calls to silence her. Overnight, Hollywood distanced itself. Roles evaporated, directors refused to work with her, and studios quietly labeled her too risky. Redgrave, one of the finest actresses of her generation, was essentially banned for words spoken on a single night. It took years for her to rebuild her career, and even then, the label never truly left her. Redgrave's story is a stark example of how one moment on stage can mean decades of exile. George Raft. Known for his sharp suits and tough guy roles, George Raft was one of the defining gangster actors of the 1930s. But off-screen, he had connections that made Hollywood nervous. His friendships with real underworld figures raised eyebrows, and rumors swirled about his business dealings. By the 1950s, studios considered him untouchable. Offers dried up, and Raft, once a box office powerhouse, found himself hustling for work in Europe and nightclubs. His ban wasn't official, but it was absolute. Hollywood had no place for someone it couldn't control. Raft's fall is a reminder that even associations, not proven actions, can close doors forever in the film capital of the world. Barbara Payton. Few stories are as tragic as Barbara Payton's. In the late 1940s, she was on track to be Hollywood's next great starlet, dazzling in films like Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, but her personal life became tabloid fodder, with stories of turbulent romances and messy court battles splashed across headlines. By the mid-1950s, studios washed their hands of her. Offers disappeared. Payton, once seen as a rising star, was effectively banned, her reputation too damaged for the conservative Hollywood machine. Her downfall illustrates how Hollywood often judged women more harshly than men. A male star could recover from scandal. A female star like Payton was cast aside, erased before her time. Peggy Cummings. Peggy Cummings should have been unforgettable. Her turn in Gun Crazy, 1950, is still hailed as one of film noir's greatest performances. She radiated danger and allure, the kind of presence most actors dream of achieving. But Hollywood wasn't interested in celebrating her, it was interested in labeling her. When her later films struggled at the box office, whispers began. Executives called her difficult, and the dreaded tag of box office poison followed soon after. It didn't matter that she had talent to spare, the industry had already closed its gates. Unlike some who fell from grace through scandal, Cummings's story was quieter, but no less cruel. She simply didn't fit Hollywood's rigid mold, and that was enough. Her career became a cautionary tale of how quickly brilliance could be discarded. Ona Munson. Audiences still remember Ona Munson as Belle Watling in Gone with the Wind, the fiery woman with a heart of gold. Yet despite her memorable role, Hollywood quietly closed its doors on her. Rumors about her personal life, whispered judgments, and the unforgiving nature of the industry left her isolated. In an era when stars were expected to fit a rigid mold, Munson didn't. She struggled to find roles after Gone with the Wind, despite proving she could hold her own against the era's biggest stars. By the late 1940s, the offers slowed to a trickle. Studios had moved on, quietly blacklisting her from the prestige pictures she once dreamed of. Munson's story reveals Hollywood's cruel streak. Talent alone was never enough. If a star didn't conform, or if gossip swirled, careers could vanish overnight. For Ona Munson, the gates of Hollywood closed before she ever had the chance to fully show her brilliance. Jean Seberg. She was the darling of French New Wave cinema. But Jean Seberg's relationship with Hollywood was far harsher. After stunning performances in Breathless and Lilith, she should have been unstoppable. Instead, she became a target. The FBI launched a smear campaign against her, leaking false stories to the press that destroyed her reputation. Studios, fearful of controversy, dropped her. Casting directors stopped calling, and suddenly, one of the brightest talents of her generation was cast into the shadows. Seberg's blacklisting was not about performance, but politics. She supported causes that challenged the establishment, and for that, Hollywood deemed her untouchable. Today, she's remembered as both a style icon and a tragic reminder of how power can silence even the most luminous stars. Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski was once hailed as one of the most visionary directors of his time. Films like Rosemary's Baby and Chinatown secured his place among cinema's greats. But after legal troubles in the late 1970s, Hollywood slammed the door shut. Though he continued to make films in Europe, winning awards and recognition, the American industry effectively banned him. His name was erased from the conversation, his projects abandoned, and his reputation forever fractured. Polanski's story is a paradox, a filmmaker celebrated abroad, but shut out at home. His banishment remains one of the most talked about exiles in Hollywood history, a case where artistry couldn't outweigh the backlash. Harvey Weinstein. Once the most powerful producer in Hollywood, Harvey Weinstein shaped the careers of countless actors and directors. He was behind Oscar-winning films like Shakespeare, In Love and The King's Speech. But when the truth about his behavior surfaced, Hollywood's reckoning arrived. Weinstein wasn't just banned, he was erased. Studios removed his name, awards were stripped, and his company collapsed. In the span of months, a man who once controlled the industry became a pariah no one dared defend. His downfall reshaped Hollywood's culture. The ban wasn't just about him. It was about sending a message that power could no longer shield those who abused it. Weinstein's name today is not remembered for movies, but as the cautionary tale of an empire destroyed. Kevin Spacey. Few performers displayed range and intensity like Kevin Spacey. From his Oscar-winning role in The Usual Suspects to the haunting brilliance of American Beauty and the political intrigue of House of Cards, he was regarded as one of Hollywood's finest actors. For years, he seemed untouchable, a master of complex and magnetic characters. But in 2017, that image shattered. Allegations of misconduct surfaced, and the industry responded with remarkable speed. Studios cut him from films already in production, streaming giants replaced him with new actors, and his long-running projects were erased from schedules. Practically overnight, one of Hollywood's most decorated stars became unwelcome in the very industry he once helped define. The speed of his fall was unlike anything seen before. Spacey's story is proof that in Hollywood, even decades of acclaim cannot shield someone when the system decides their time is over. Mel Gibson. For years, Mel Gibson was one of Hollywood's most bankable stars, headlining Lethal Weapon, Braveheart and The Patriot. He even won an Oscar for directing Braveheart. But in the mid-2000s, a series of recorded outbursts changed everything. The remarks he made, offensive, divisive, and impossible to ignore, led Hollywood to freeze him out. Projects evaporated, agents dropped him, and his once flawless reputation collapsed. Gibson spent years in exile, struggling to find financing or distribution for his work. Though he's slowly reappeared in recent years, he has never regained his old status. For many, Gibson remains a symbol of how one's own words can lead to industry exile. Hollywood gave him nearly everything, then took it back in an instant. Rose McGowan. In the 1990s, Rose McGowan was one of Hollywood's brightest rising stars. She lit up the screen in cult favorites like Jawbreaker and became a household name through her role on Charmed. With her striking presence and sharp talent, it seemed her future was secure. But when McGowan began to speak out against injustices in Hollywood, the industry's response was swift and unforgiving. Casting calls that once came easily stopped. Studios distanced themselves. Quiet whispers labeled her difficult, and within a few years, her acting career had all but disappeared. Instead, McGowan found a new role, one she never asked for, but fully embraced, that of an activist and truth-teller. She became a voice for change, even as the system that once embraced her shut her out. Her story proves that in Hollywood, courage often comes at a steep price, but it can also ignite lasting transformation. Kirk Douglas. He was Hollywood royalty, the man behind Spartacus and Paths of Glory. Yet even Kirk Douglas wasn't immune to the blacklist. In the 1950s, studios demanded that he distance himself from Dalton Trumbo, the blacklisted screenwriter. Instead, Douglas did the unthinkable. He put Trumbo's real name on the credits of Spartacus. That act effectively ended the blacklist, but nearly ended Douglas's career as well. Studios threatened him, allies distanced themselves, and whispers of a quiet ban circulated. Though he ultimately survived, Douglas risked everything to do what was right. His story is proof that sometimes standing up for justice means standing on the edge of Hollywood's gates, unsure if they'll ever open again. Lena Horne. A dazzling singer and actress, Lena Horne should have been one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Her voice was unforgettable, her beauty iconic, and her presence magnetic. Yet the 1940s and 1950s weren't ready for a black actress who refused to play stereotypes. Horne rejected demeaning roles, spoke openly against segregation, and challenged the system head-on. Hollywood responded by sidelining her. She was denied major roles, and her contracts dissolved. Instead of celebrating her, the industry quietly pushed her away. Horne found success on stage and in music, but her Hollywood film career was stolen by prejudice and politics. Today, she's remembered not only as a performer, but as a pioneer who paid the price for demanding respect. Robert Blake. Robert Blake's career spanned nearly his entire life. As a child, he charmed audiences in Our Gang comedies, and as an adult, he became a television fixture in Beretta, playing a street-smart detective that made him a household name. For decades, he seemed untouchable, a working actor who grew up on screen and matured into one of Hollywood's most reliable performers. But in the early 2000s, everything collapsed. Blake was charged in connection with his wife's mysterious death, and although he was ultimately acquitted, the damage was irreversible. In Hollywood, perception often matters more than verdicts. Producers and studios decided he was too risky, and overnight, his opportunities evaporated. His story is a stark reminder that even innocence in court doesn't guarantee acceptance in Hollywood. For Robert Blake, the courtroom door may have opened, but the studio gates closed forever. Bill Cosby. For decades, Bill Cosby was celebrated as America's dad. His role on The Cosby Show defined wholesome family entertainment in the 1980s and turned him into one of the most trusted and beloved figures on television. Beyond acting, his pioneering career in comedy broke barriers, earning him historic awards and a permanent place in popular culture. But in 2018, everything changed. After a series of legal battles, Cosby was convicted and sentenced to prison. Though the conviction was later overturned on technical grounds, the damage to his career was permanent. Networks pulled reruns, institutions rescinded honors, and studios made it clear Cosby would never again hold a place in Hollywood. His story is one of the sharpest downfalls in entertainment history. Once the embodiment of trust and laughter, he became a reminder that fame offers no protection when reputations collapse. R. Kelly. Few artists defined 1990s R&B the way R. Kelly did. With hits like I Believe I Can Fly and chart-topping albums, he sold millions of records and influenced an entire generation of singers and songwriters. His music filled arenas, dominated radio, and earned him multiple awards, making him one of the most recognized names in entertainment. But by the 2000s, troubling allegations cast a shadow over his career, and in 2021, his legal battles reached their peak with a high-profile conviction. The response was swift and irreversible. Concerts were canceled, industry partners cut ties, and collaborations were wiped from future projects. Even Hollywood, once eager to feature his music in films, removed his name completely. Once celebrated as an icon, R. Kelly's story is now remembered as a cautionary tale. His career wasn't just paused, it was permanently locked out of the industry he once ruled. From silent-era icons to modern megastars, these stories reveal one truth. Hollywood builds legends, but it also buries them. Some were banned for politics, others for personal actions, and many simply for daring to step outside the rules. Which story shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more untold histories, and share this video with friends. And remember, behind every shining spotlight, there's a shadow waiting to fall.